The 3 volumes that comprise Tolkien's immortal classic, The Lord of the Rings, are foundational to just about all of fantasy and sci-fi. All the themes and tropes found in that wondrous work are evident everywhere, in films, in books, and in television, including the Star Wars franchise, Dune, and Game of Thrones. Well, except for the latter's awful, awful ending. What makes Tolkien's work such a masterpiece and a constant source of reflection are the abundant and complex moral themes that resonate with each and every one of us. And Tolkien has such a keen eye for the complexities of good and evil that exist all around us, and that's why his books remain timeless and relevant even now. And certainly some of Tolkien's most villainous characters remind us of people we've encountered in our own lives. We all know a Wormtongue or a Gollum, especially if you've ever worked retail or in restaurants. And if you haven't, trust me on this one. In contemporary parlance, we might describe some of the evident evil in Tolkien's classic as clinical disorders, such as sociopathy or narcissism and so on. Some, like Gollum or Denethor, might even be presented as victims in today's day and age. But perhaps simply calling such states bad and antithetical to being fully realized human beings has the most value, while also recognizing just how complicated we all are in this world. So here are some versions of evil evident in The Lord of the Rings, and this may very well be the tip of the iceberg, so if you can name some more, have at it in the comments down below. Sauron is perhaps the easiest to explore because his malevolence is so integral to the story itself, and it resonates with the cruel despotism that informed much of the 20th century with the likes of Stalin, Mao, or Hitler. Of course, Tolkien was emphatic in denying that his work was about specific historical events. Still, he never denied that it drew from the 2 great wars of his time, perhaps drawing most from World War I, where Tolkien saw action at the Battle of the Somme as a soldier in the British Army. So Sauron's despotic and evil aims are bound by the desire for subjugation, enslavement, and total conquest of Middle-earth. Power and domination are Sauron's aims, not total annihilation of those who oppose him. That's a crucial distinction. His evil has an order to it. In the language of Dungeons & Dragons, he might be considered lawful evil. It's one ring to rule them all, not one ring to destroy them all. And to be sure, Sauron is not perfectly analogous to Lucifer or Iblis in the Abrahamic traditions, or Ahriman in Zoroastrianism, though he comes quite close. Perhaps the closest analog to those entities might be Morgoth in Tolkien's universe. Not sure. Here's Tolkien explaining Sauron in his own words. Quote, Sauron was of course not evil in origin. He was a spirit corrupted by the prime Dark Lord, Morgoth. He was given an opportunity of repentance when Morgoth was overcome, but could not face the humiliation of recantation and suing for pardon. So his temporary turn to good and benevolence ended in a greater relapse until he became the main representative of evil of later ages. If you're still unsure about what kind of evil Sauron represents, I'm certain you can still find some of his minions in Congress today. Saruman is the consummate opportunist, a craven politician of Middle-earth who will betray anyone and all principles to achieve his own ends. In the films, he's played to perfection by the late Christopher Lee. Lee captures all the nuances of manipulation, sophistry, and guile Saruman employs toward his wicked ends, and even in his hapless attempt to convince Gandalf to join Sauron. Of course, Saruman did not start out evil. In fact, he once headed the White Council, vehemently opposed to Sauron. However, his lust for power and consummate fear of being on the losing side of the battle for Middle-earth compels him toward wickedness. Here is Saruman in his own words as he tries to convince Gandalf to join him. And notice the amount of guile and sophistry in his words. Quote, A new power is rising. Against it, the old allies and policies will not avail us at all. There is no hope left in elves or dying Numenor. This, then, is one choice before you, before us. We may join with that power. It would be wise, Gandalf. There is hope that way. Its victory is at hand, and there will be rich reward for those that aided it. What a creep and what a coward. Also, I'm pretty sure my last manager was Saruman's protege. Labeling Denethor as evil is certain to elicit controversy for some. To be sure, in the books, he's far more complex and even noble than his expedient depiction in the films, though the extended versions remedy this to an extent. Still, Denethor ultimately chooses despair, and in doing so invites evil upon his family and Gondor, negating so much of the good he did in battling the forces of Sauron for so long. With the likes of Denethor, we see just how complex Tolkien's characters can be, and just how complex his understanding of morality remains. Many might argue that Denethor has a mental breakdown and is not the cherry tomato chomping sociopath he's depicted to be in the films. That may well be true. But Tolkien is incredible in depicting the irony of despair and the evil it then elicits. Denethor falsely believes all is lost when he peers into the Palantir and mistakes the black fleet of ships led by Aragorn to be the forces of Sauron. He tells Gandalf, quote, "Nay, I have seen more than thou knowest, grey fool. For thy hope is but ignorance. All the east is moving, and even now the wind of thy hope cheats thee, and wafts up Anduin a fleet with black sails. The west has failed. It is time for all to depart who would not be slaves." One of despair's greatest tricks is that it blinds us completely to hope, even when hope is right before our very eyes. We even become contemptuous of it the way Denethor is when arguing with Gandalf. As a result, only evil ensues. So of course, when Denethor's despair reaches its fever pitch, an avalanche of wickedness ensues. He tries to burn his son Faramir alive before he himself commits suicide. So much complexity exists with Denethor, but I would argue he ultimately chooses despair and therefore evil by risking all of Gondor with his hapless solipsism. Also, I've never looked at cherry tomatoes the same way because of him, and that counts for something. The likes of Dr. Romney might have a field day with Gollum if he was their patient. His self-absorption and self-deception beggars belief. He is, in so many respects, the consummate narcissist, though perhaps of the covert variety rather than the grandiose. Arguably, we might also consider him the most infernal addict in all of literature because of his all-consuming obsession with the ring. He at once engenders both endless pity and endless contempt. Sam and Frodo's treatment of Gollum illustrates these two competing notions surrounding him. Frodo pities him, while Sam holds him in utter suspicion. Ultimately, Sam is right. Gollum lures them into Shelob's lair to have them killed. However, Frodo's compassion takes on a spiritual dimension as it's ultimately tied to his destiny in finally destroying the ring and saving Middle-earth. But Gollum is a strange and mercurial character and is arguably one of the most compelling in the entire Tolkien universe. While he does choose evil, one can't help but view him with tremendous pity, similar to Frodo. Even Tolkien himself apparently shed tears when he wrote the following scene about him. Quote, "Gollum looked at them. A strange expression passed over his lean, hungry face. The gleam faded from his eyes, and they went dim and gray, old and tired. A spasm of pain seemed to twist him, and he turned away, peering back up towards the pass, shaking his head, as if engaged in some interior debate. Then he came back, and slowly putting out a trembling hand, very cautiously, he touched Frodo's knee. But almost the touch was a caress. For a fleeting moment, could one of the sleepers have seen him, they would have thought that they beheld an old, weary hobbit, shrunken by the years that carried him far beyond his time, beyond friends and kin, and fields and streams of youth, an old, starved, pitiable thing." In many ways, some of the most compelling and evil characters in The Lord of the Rings are also the most complex and tragic. And tragedy, as Nietzsche alluded to in Birth of Tragedy, is resolved in the next life, not this one. And so perhaps even evil is redeemed. Or is it? That I leave to you. As C.S. Lewis once said, quote, "Someday you will be old enough to start reading fairy tales again." A fitting quote from one of Tolkien's dearest friends. So what do you think about good and evil in Tolkien's universe? Does he allow for enough complexities? Is it relevant today, or is it too simple? Please like, subscribe, and comment down below. Thanks for watching.